Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Seahawks Real Hawk Talk post-game show after the Seahawks play what may have been, arguably was, one of the worst regular season games in Pete Carroll's coaching career and Russell Wilson's playing career. So a really, really abysmal loss to a really, really bad team without their starting quarterback at home. While you're relatively healthy. So I don't have a lot of good things to say about this game. I wouldn't have had good things to say about this game if they had managed to score on that last drive. My mood would have been very mildly different. But let's bring in everybody. I'm sure you guys have some stuff to say. If I just monologue about this, I could go on the whole show. So first, Dayna O'Gorman, our ray of sunshine. Welcome to the show at Dayna OG on Twitter.
Thanks. I wish we were on the other side of this. I really, really do. There's not a lot of good to say about what happened today. But I think that we can maybe pinpoint a couple of positives if that's what's going to get us through to this next week in the Jets.
Yeah. Moral victories. Super useful. Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How are you doing, dude?
I'm not doing well. That was a rough watch, on every level. I was one of the few people who thought I know the Giants' DVOA was really low, and I knew every time I've watched them this year, they've played above their talent level, and their defense especially has impressed me in the secondary and their D line. They just play really hard. But just from the Seahawks perspective, it was just such a discouraging game on a number of levels. And that's as bad as a game from the Seahawks coaching staff as I can remember. And they got outcoached. They got outplayed with it. They basically lost to a team with no quarterback. And it reminds me a lot of a game in 2017, which this season is starting to remind me of. They had a really fast start that year, and they started to fizzle that year, and things sort of unraveled, where they played the Redskins that year, or they're called Washington now. And they were missing basically their entire team, and they ended up outplaying the Seahawks, scoring late, winning the game. That game reminded me a lot of this game. It was just sloppy the whole way through. There was a block punt or a defensive touchdown. And other than that, just ineptitude all day.
Yeah, that game had Kirk Cousins at quarterback, correct?
Yeah, it was Cousins, and they were missing 4/5 of their O-line, their entire receiving core. And Doug scored one of those late touchdowns where he burned Josh Norman. But then they went right back down the field and scored to win the game.
That was an awful, awful game.
Yeah, that's what today reminded me of.
But Jeff, we just lost to Colt McCoy.
Yeah, I said they lost to a team with no quarterback, essentially.
I mean, Colt McCoy.
Before today, they never even scored a touchdown against Colt McCoy the one other time. I don't know. I'm kind of glad it was Colt McCoy, because if Daniel Jones had been in and healthy, I think this would have been a lot worse.
That is a very good point, Dayna, and absolutely a fair one. Certainly not least, but let's bring in Nathan Ernst at Nathan E11. When everyone else goes low, I'm sure Nathan's going to go high. How are you doing, man?
Good, I guess. Also unhappy about the loss. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's many other words than embarrassing to describe that game. So.
Yeah. Well, let's start by talking about where does your finger point first in this game? And I'll kind of get started. I think, man, the only way that the Giants could win this game, the only way, was if they could run the ball. As bad as the offense was playing, as bad as they were, and honestly, relative to expectations, the offense was worse. But in terms of what was needed to win this game, all they had to do was keep the Giants from running the ball. If they had done that, they would have won. So for me, this wasn't even a hard one to figure out. They were not going to pass the ball. You could commit every player to defend the run, and they were not going to pass the ball. So as soon as the Seahawks ceased to be able to stop the run in the second half somehow, that to me, people talk about, hey, do you give Ken Norton credit for the defense's resurgence? I'm like, no, that's exactly why not, because he is an idiot. He is an idiot. He has not proven that he can outsmart any other coordinator. And they made some modification, and it took him long enough to figure out how to counter it. And I don't know if they ever really did, that it cost them a game. So, I mean, you're not going to find an easier offense to defend than this. And you gave up 17 points. That is completely inexcusable. And I know, like, we'll talk about the offense. There's a ton of fingers to be pointed there. But the easiest thing in this game was to stop the run and to stop the Giants offense. And they didn't do it. So that's the first place I go. Jeff, how about you?
I'll go on the other side of the ball. I think it's the offense. And it seems like just over the past 5 or 6 games, the offense just seems a little lost. And we could talk about Russell in a bit, and there's certainly things we can discuss there. But to me, I see more of a big picture issue. And I know Ben, Baldwin, and Nathan, I saw one of them tweet this out, but last year when Tyler Lockett went out, the offense struggled really badly. And now he's been banged up, and the offense has kind of the errors come out on them. But to me, I see more of a coaching issue, and I see a team that almost doesn't know what they are anymore. They seem stuck on trying to identify whether they're trying to establish the run early or they're trying to hit the deep ball. And when the deep ball's not there, they don't seem to have like a semblance of like an offense that's in rhythm. And teams are going hard. Buffalo was the first team to do this. They were going hard to take away the deep ball. And when Tyler or DK don't win deep, there just isn't much there. And they start passing more to Holster and to Disley in the second end of the game as a little bit, but they just seem lost offensively. And it's been a trend for a while. And I think this is on Shoddy, and I think they have not responded to adjustments in the second half of the year. That's why I said it reminds me of 2017 in a lot of ways, where they started hot that year of 7-3 or 8-3, and things just kind of fizzled from there. And to me, it's not just on Russell. I think the offense as a whole, it's hard to try to figure out what they are and what they're trying to be, because they just don't. They look like they're trying to do too much at once, and they've completely lost their identity.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Dayna, what are your thoughts?
I agree. And I was actually, I didn't think the defense looks too terrible, although I completely agree with what you said, Brian, that, of all games, this is the one that the defense should have just, destroyed on. And they didn't. I don't know if they got tired because they were on the damn field so much because the offense couldn't stay on. I don't know what it was, but it just got worse. But at the beginning, I thought that they looked pretty decent in the first half. We can talk about specifics about that later, but I agree with this offense. And Jeff, you're absolutely right. This team has no idea who they are right now. They have no idea on offense who they are. The beginning of the year, we're going to let Russ cook. And then it was working, and pat ourselves on the back because we figured out how to make this work. And then the rest of the NFL figured it out too. And they figured out exactly what to do in order to slow it down. And then you have the injuries on the line or whatever it is that makes Russ run around behind the line like he's a skittish cat. I can't figure out if he just doesn't trust his line to actually, protect him anymore, although sometimes he has a great pocket. So I don't know what that is. And then he makes these decisions sometimes that are completely baffling. So I'm not sure where it is. I don't know if they moved Shoddy out of the box back to the field and if we need to put him back up in the box or vice versa. I don't know what it is. But this to me has a lot to do with play calling and a lot to do with execution behind Russell Wilson. However, those drops from DK have to stop. They have to stop. I can't even stand it.
So Nathan, I think Dayna brings up a good point. Is it possible that Skybox Shoddy needs to be replaced by hot air balloon Shoddy? Is he not higher?
We need rafters Shoddy. We just need to keep moving up.
Does he need a better vantage point to see the
satellite Shoddy?
Oh, brother. Yeah, where's your focus right now on the state of this team? Where's your attention looking?
Yeah, it's the offense. I mean, they're too good to be playing this poorly. Even against a good defense, giving or scoring only 14 points or whatever it was they ended up with. It's just not nearly good, or 12, right? I don't know, whatever they ended up with. it's just not nearly good enough, right? And I think that Shoddy is a concern at this point. I think he needs to figure some stuff out. I do think that they've been solved to some degree. I don't know that they are not doing a good job of either anticipating what defenses are going to do to them, or I don't think I think that they kind of go in. It seems like they go into games and they just kind of plan to do one thing. And if that one thing isn't there, they don't mix it up. And they've shown at times the ability to pass quick. Obviously, they've shown the ability to pass deep. They don't seem to have the ability to do both in a single game, right? And this game, it just felt like Russ actually had pretty good protection for parts of the game, even though I think he ended up with probably a handful of sacks, or he's just standing back there and waiting. And maybe we'll watch the tape and maybe there were guys open and he's missing it, but I trust Russ to find guys downfield, and he, for whatever reason, wasn't doing it. His accuracy also looks pretty crappy.
Yeah.
He's not hitting a lot of guys on target in stride. There's a lot of leaping, stretching kind of catches, and so whatever's going on there, I think needs to get straightened out too. But this offense as a whole just needs to they just have to be a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, the mechanics definitely seem off. I think that's a good point. Like, there's a lot of things going on there. I think, and you hit on a bunch of them. So, look, all of us, probably every fan, you get lizard brain, like freak out annoyance about what's going on, and you see one thing, and like the chats, like half people are like, let Russ Cook ruin the season, and the other people are like, what are you talking about? The offensive line's the problem, and other people are like, Shoddy's the problem. Football is a complex orchestration of things, right? And the idea that it's ever one thing is probably too simplistic. And I think we can all agree Russell Wilson is not playing as well as he was the first 5-6 weeks of the season. He isn't. I think we can also agree the game plan is not as advantageous as it was early in the season. We're not seeing plays. Remember, everyone that's watched the Seahawks play, when Russell Wilson takes his drop and hits the top of his drop and lets go of the ball, that's going to be a touchdown or a big play almost every time. Like, almost every time. We saw that at least once a game for the first 6 weeks of the season. At least once a game, often like 2 or 3 times a game. I can't remember the last time I saw Russell hit the back of his drop and let it loose. He's not getting those plays. And it's not always because of pass protection. There is pass protection, but either the guys are covered or Russ has now got in his head he can't turn the ball over. And so he doesn't want to take some of those chances. I think that's part of it too. But pass protection hasn't been as good. So there's a number of things that are cascading on top of each other. Nathan and I got in a little, snarkiness during the game. Nothing too bad, but like he was taking a victory lap about Chris Carson. Like, and here's the thing. I actually completely agree with Nathan on this point that there's a lot of people saying, Chris Carson being out was why the Seahawks offense was scuffling. Bullshit. That was never the reason. Now, are they better? And that's where Nathan and I might disagree. Is it better to run? Are you better off having a better running game than a worse running game? Yes, you obviously are. And Chris Carson is a better runner than anyone else on the team. So the team is obviously better with Chris Carson, but he is not the salve. He is not the cure-all for what's going on with this offense. And I think you saw that. Like, one of the things, Jeff, that really stood out to me in this game, you talked about, I think Nathan, you said it too, they get a little one-handed or myopic in their approach. First half, they had like 3rd and 4s where the only developing routes were intermediate or deep. There was no place for Russell to hit short. And you can't do that when the pass protection isn't excellent. And then there's other plays where they do have short, but Russell doesn't go to those plays. And he's holding on to the ball too long. He's trying to find something deeper. And it's just like this gnashing of like, they're just not in rhythm. They're not on the same page. And I feel like Shoddy and Russ got to get in the room and honestly, like, just shut everyone out and just say, hey, what do we do well? We're going to do that. We're going to do it over and over again. And even if it, doesn't work great, we're just going to go with that. And I feel like you said, Jeff, I feel like they're searching. and they're not going to beat many teams, or they're not going to do anything interesting this season if that's the state that they're in.
I don't think that we have often thought, at least not in the Russell Wilson era, except for maybe 1 year, where there needed to be a come to Jesus with the offense. Do you know what I mean? We knew that the defense needed that this year. They had that meeting, they improved. And all of us in, this group have said, if we could just get the defense a little bit better, if we kept that offense, it would be great. Well, the defense has managed to get a little bit better, right? Like that was great. But now the offense is completely baffled. And I saw it over and over and over on Twitter today. Why can't they both function at the same time? Because it doesn't ever happen. But I think this is the first time in a long time where there needs to be that meeting where there's a sit down and have a little come to Jesus with this offense. And that, might not sit well with some of the Russell Wilson, truthers, but it's just true. It just needs to happen because they're just completely baffled. And, I know that we don't all agree on the running situation, but if your quarterback looks that confused, run the damn ball, run it down their throat. He was getting 5 yards. He averaged 5 yards. Chris Carson did in this game every time he ran. So just do that. See if that works. But they seemed, at least in my opinion, so hell bent on throwing that deep ball over and over and again that they just couldn't get it. Or if it was lost, they, like you said, they had nowhere else to go.
Yeah. And that's where I struggle. I see an offense that just doesn't know what they are and what they're trying to do. Like there was that 4th and 1 play, or 4th and inches, basically, where they don't run the ball to Chris Carson in an obvious running situation. There's other plays where they're just, I know Pete philosophically, like in his book, and he loves that that chunk passing play, and that's Russell's strength. So they seem so focused on that, they seem to take everything else out of their offense. So it seems that the Giants have a pretty good secondary. So that you take that away, and all of a sudden, they're not doing things like motion and play action and things to make things easier on the quarterback. And they're doing things that they're just so focused on those two specific things. They just don't. They have 4 touchdown passes in their last 4 games as an offense. And this was a guy who was getting like 4 or 5 touchdowns a game at the beginning of the year. And
yeah, it's crazy though. Like I've seen this as up there too. Like we were like, I've seen this from a bunch of people. Russell Wilson's too involved in off the field stuff. He's distracted.
It pisses me off.
Earlier on,
oh
it was
my God.
Russell is injured. And I'm like,
I thought he was injured.
Come on. Like he's just not playing well. And Shoddy's not calling a good game. Like it's not some crazy thing. Like Tara has nothing to do with how Russell's playing right now.
Yeah. I think the injuries, they are like healthy in terms of everyone playing, but it would not surprise me if it turns out that Russell has something that's affecting his mechanics, and that's why he has been off consistently for weeks. Tyler Lockett has not looked dynamic for weeks. David Moore has not looked dynamic for weeks, right? And those, obviously Lockett's huge in the offense. And we had spent a lot of time in the start of the season talking about how good Moore looked and how important what he was bringing in terms of, what he can do with the ball in his hands, right? The end arounds and the different things like that, where he can get the ball and really make a defense pay. And neither of those guys have looked like anything more than, just average receivers at best. So I think injuries across the board are probably a bigger deal than we're giving them credit for, because, other than Shell, they're all out there.
Yeah.
They miss Shell.
They do.
They do miss Shell. That's true too. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing. Like Shell, absolutely. Like they miss him, but they were struggling before he got hurt.
Yep.
Like I saw people today like, oh, this is Jamarco Jones, which I know I've got a Jamarco Jones thing. I still think he played better than Abuehi. So, and I think that'll prove out in his grades, to be totally honest. But we were not a Brandon Shell away from the offense looking good today. Like not at all. And I mean, here's a couple things. So I've actually like definitely been supportive of the Seahawks going to early down passing more often than they had before. It's not when the defense is ready for it. It's something that Russell can be good at and take advantage of. I've never been a proponent of this notion of, that is the only thing that you need to do. And here's why. Like, you can pass 70% of the time on neutral script situations. If you're going to pass with the play calls we saw today, the pass protection we saw, and the quarterback play we saw today, and to some extent the receiver play we saw today, you're not guaranteed of that being a productive offense. And you can say, well, it's going to be more productive than anything else. I don't know. I don't know in a game like today that's the case. Like, I think the Seahawks are best off when they can do multiple things well, and when they can beat you in multiple ways. And that is not, there's no part of me that's saying, okay, start running the ball a bunch. That's not actually what I'm saying. I don't think it's ever been as simple as pass the ball 70% on neutral script and your offense is going to be good. And I think the last 5 weeks have been examples of that isn't enough. Your offense actually has to be good. You have to execute. If that's what you're going to call, you still got to do the plays well. That's
a straw man, though. I mean, no one said pass more on first downs and you're going to be a good offense, right? It's always that you will be better, right? And there is qualifiers there. Like today, they would have been better off running more, even on early downs, probably. Although I don't know, the numbers might be pretty close on that. But like if your passing offense is going to get outdueled by Colt McCoy, then running more is certainly an option, right? That run more in those situations or pass more in those situations is for like a normal NFL offense. And what we saw from the Seahawks today was not a normal NFL offense. It was terrible.
Right. Well, and I think we're roughly saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I think, we get like, well, I won't go too far into it, but I mean, fourth and an inch, and the way that they're playing today, and they decide to pass in that situation.
And the stupid thing about that is that analytics don't even agree with that.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
The nerds all like there's one time that everyone agrees rushing is good. It's short yardage, right? Goal line, whatever, fourth and short, run. And you're in a game like today when you're just running so much better than you're passing. That was baffling to me.
Can I give you guys some quick stats? I know EPA is the stat of every nerd's dream. So let me just give you some numbers and maybe Nathan can help us just decipher what this means. But for the first 5 weeks of the season, and by the way, these are brought to you by Ben Baldwin's stats. So thanks, Ben, for putting this up there. For the first 5 weeks of the season, the Seahawks offense was second in the NFL in EPA per play at 0.203. Okay, 0.203. Since then, the Seahawks offense is 12th in the NFL at 0.087. It's a significant difference. Now, I don't know how scaling works with EPA, but like, is it fair to say that that's like half as effective, less than half as effective of an offense? If it was,
there's no scaling or anything there, so yeah.
Okay, so I mean and I don't think that includes today's game, by the way.
Probably not.
If you break it down by quarters, like first 4 games of the season, again, Seahawks second in the NFL, 0.225. Second 4 games of the season, Seahawks start dropping 0.139. They're 7th in the NFL, and then since week 10, so we're in week 13 now, so that's 10, 11, 12. So that's 3 games. Seahawks are 0.019. So, I mean, you're talking about the first 4 games being 0.225 to the last 3 games, not including this one, being 0.019. That is just a massive, massive drop off in the efficiency of your offense.
Yeah, and Russ today put up a negative 11 EPA, and that's without any kind of a catastrophe. I mean, he had the 1 pick, right? And I guess maybe the fumble gets attributed to him. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah,
but
he definitely fumbled that.
Well, I don't know how that works in the. Did he? I thought it was a botched snap.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, but still, like, there's no like pick 6 or anything on there that like really swings it. Like he was just, atrocious today. The passing game was atrocious today, and the rushing game overall was negative 0.3 EPA. It was actually positive on early downs, but so they were really pretty bad all around. Although it looks like Russ takes the majority of the negative rushing yards. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I throw this out here really quick? So I follow a whole bunch of New York reporters. And so this is what Joe Judge had to say after the game. He said that they had a good plan and that it included trying to completely confuse Russell Wilson in his passing game, which is a lot easier said than done. He beat everything you can throw at him defensively, and we managed to do it. I don't think he beat anything that they threw at him today. I think that all of it was baffling to him. I mean, they're trying to give Russell some respect, which I appreciate, but I think that defensively they knew they had to screw with the passing game. That just goes right back to what we were saying, that they should have run this ball.
And yeah, if you want like a story of Ken Norton, like their defensive coordinator, I think Patrick Graham is his name. He's done an amazing job this year with not a lot of talent. And they're really creative with their schemes. They're really smart with how they use their players. They maximize what they have. And I'm kind of jealous watching it. Because if I'm the owner of the Seahawks right now, this is a game that I would wonder if this is the right coaching staff to be coaching this team. Because at every level, from Pete not punting and wasting a timeout on a field goal, to Shoddy, to Ken Norton, it's another failure from this coaching staff. Like since that extension, something's gone in Pete's head that's just gone the other way. Because I'm wondering again, like, is this the right coaching staff for this an offensive-led team that doesn't seem to have an identity of what they are?
Or
you got some quotes from the post game?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, deep breath, guys. These are tough ones. So I'll start with just first that Pete Carroll says that Chris Carson is having trouble even getting to the game. So they really are trying to limit his snaps. So it sounds like that foot is still an issue. He says that they called timeout on the Giants' field goal attempt because they were unsure if they had 12 men on the field. In the fourth quarter, like that's just pretty damning coaching, like all around. Greg Bell, I want to give Greg Bell credit for asking a tough question and getting a pretty bad answer. Why so soft 2 games in a row on 4th and short? Why not have Chris Carson pounded in there? And Pete Carroll's response, well, that's easy to say now.
Oh my God.
So that's what I mean. Like, he is not looking like a competent leader of the team. Every week in his press conference after these games, he just says something that's mind-boggling. Whether that's Vincent Lombardi's formula the other day or his explanations of why he's not punting and something like that. Like, he is not displaying the way I view a coach is he leading the team in the right direction or the wrong direction? And since that extension, this looks a lot like 2017. They're trending the wrong way.
Man, it's good that Evan is in here because that quote took me right back to the Dallas game when he was asked afterwards, like, why didn't you guys pass more? And it's something about, he ended up saying something like, well, yeah, we really wish we would have got the ball in Russ's hands more. And like, you are in complete control. That's a spectacularally dumb thing for him to say.
The Seahawks are now 62-2 when leading by 4 or more points at halftime, with both losses.
The guy lands on the end zone. They're easily up 10-0.
Yeah, go ahead, Dayna. I've cut you off a couple times.
No, you're fine. I just can't. I try to remember, and I try to remind people that a lot of football is luck, and I truly, truly believe that how the ball bounces, how the ball does, all of that sort of thing. It's milliseconds, but when you start to see the same mistakes repeated over and over, you start to question, well, we have only been seeing these same mistakes be repeated in the last, what you said, 4 or 5 games, 5 games, right? The beginning of the season, everyone is singing their praises that, the defense needed help, but Shoddy was now a god and Russell was the wonderful thing. So you wonder what's changed. And Jeff, you bring up the extension. I don't know that that's it. I wonder if it is, there seems to be a lack of group effort here. I don't know if that means, and I mean within the coaching staff, not on the team. So does that mean that everything was going so well? So Pete's like, do your thing, Shoddy, do your thing, Ken, which we knew that wasn't working. So then he took over for Ken, or we think he did. That hasn't been said, but we think he did. And so, then all of a sudden the defense starts to get better. And so he was just letting the offense do the offensive thing. And I don't know that as a head coach, everything comes down to Pete Carroll. But I think the question mark is now the coaching staff as a whole. You have to look at where the problem children are. I still think the bigger problem is on the defense than the offense. I think that can be fixed. but you have to start questioning, has Pete let up control or is he taking too much control? What has changed in the 5 games? Literally, it's 5 games.
I think the offense has looked since the second half of the first Cardinals game. The first half of the Cardinals, they scored 27 points.
They look great.
From the second half of the Cardinals game on, I've not seen a Seahawk game where they looked impressive. Even in the Bills game where they scored 34, people are throwing them roses after they scored 28 against the Cardinals in this last game. They won 28-21. I thought that was a very timid and conservative game. That was not an offensive performance that would beat a good team in a clutch situation. That was just it was good enough. This was a dominant elite offense. It was in the argument for the best offense in the entire NFL. It was in the argument in the conversation for the best single side of the ball in the entire NFL. I think there's, over the last 3 games, is it totally clear that they're even the better side of the offense in their own team? I don't know that it's crystal clear that that's the case. So, I mean, I still would say the offense is better than this defense, but the fact that that's even a question is ridiculous. So we don't have to keep this going for too much longer. It's painful for folks, I know. What I'll ask you guys in closing, can they recover from this? Can they recover from this and be a contender? Not can they recover from this and make the playoffs and win a game or so? Are there things they can do to go from where they are right now to being a true contending team? And Nathan, I'm gonna put you on the spot and start with you.
I mean, can they? Of course, yeah, they can. Is it likely? I mean, this is probably the worst time to ask me that, because I mean, they didn't look like they were likely to do anything today. I think that there's still, a better than not chance that they get back to something approaching a very, very good offense. It's hard now to really, because everything you just said is true. Since that first half of the Cardinals game, the offense has not looked elite. There have been times where they've looked very good, and then a lot of times where they've looked very bad. And so I don't have any confidence right now that they're going to get back to something approaching what they were at the start of the year.
Jeff.
Is it physically possible? Sure. They have the players there. They have the personnel. They have should be a great quarterback, but I don't have a lot of faith in this coaching staff to get it right. And that's really the main job of the coaching staff, is to fix the problems. And until I see evidence that they can identify what their issues are, I don't have confidence. And next week should be better. They play the Jets, but right now they're the 5th seed. The Rams jumped them again. And if the season ended today, they're playing the Giants again in the playoffs. So things are not looking great. I believe in Russell, obviously. I believe in DK, but I think their coaching staff, like Dayna said, they need to have this come to Jesus moment, because they don't know who they are anymore. And that's more concerning than any win or loss.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dayna. I'll ask you the same question, but you watch the first series and they looked as good as they've looked on offense in weeks. The pass protection was great. The mix of pass and run was great. Almost every play call was successful and did what it needed to do. They stalled down near the red zone, but all the way down the field, that was like clockwork. And it looked like the kind of performance like they had a meeting and they were going to come out and say, this is who we are. And then nothing for almost the entire game. So yeah, where are you on this team, and what do you think reasonably can happen to get them back to where they want to be?
So I think you're absolutely right. You compare the first series with the last one, they don't even look like the same team. You know what I mean? And it's just so bizarre and baffling to me. At the same time, literally, when I saw how much time was left on the clock and Russell was getting the ball, I'm like, oh, they're going to win this game. Like it's ingrained in our heads because of what Russell has done for so long. for them to just fix it at the end. Fix it at the end. That's what we always expect. And I think that this was a good eye opener, hopefully for the team too. I do believe that they can come back, and I think they'll do well in the playoffs. I don't know that this, unless there's a miraculous change, and anything can happen in football. I truly believe that. So I don't think this is a Super Bowl team. I don't think they could necessarily be a contender, but depending on how the chips fall because of how bizarre this year has been. I mean, we have to remember the Lions are one game out of the playoffs right now. The Lions. I mean, so this year's been just so strange that anything could happen. But I think that the defense has done what we asked them to do and just get a little bit better. And so now we just need them to find out who they are on offense again. But I have faith because I don't have any reason to think that they can't. I think they will, because over the years, I haven't seen a reason to believe that they can't. Except for the 1 year, 17.
So, hold on. I think I got this wrong. Let me do this one more time. So I'm going to see, because I do think this has got to be up there with one of the worst. The Seahawks were 11-point favorites heading into this game. The last time the Seahawks lost a game where they were 11-point favorites or more was 2015 to the St. Louis Rams at the time. They lost 23-17. And in that game, taking a quick look back, that was back when everyone talked about Jeff Fisher owning Pete Carroll as opposed to McGenius. And so the Seahawks lost to Case Keenum in that game. I think that's a pretty good comparison. He threw for 103 yards and 1 touchdown in that game, and he beat Russell Wilson and the Seahawks 23-17. So that's probably the game that most closely compares to this one in the Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson era. Seahawks got a lot of work to do. There is no easy path ahead for them. They just got to work their way out of it. The good news is they do have elite players. They do have coaches that have been to the mountaintop before, and they still have an 8-4 record. So and a relatively friendly schedule. But there's not going to be any gimmies. And as the Raiders saw today, the Jets aren't necessarily a walk in the park either. So life just got a lot more interesting. I hope everybody takes care of themselves and is kind to each other. Don't take this out on other Seahawks fans. It's not their fault your team's playing like this. Go out for a jog. I just did. That's why I'm still sweaty. And